Hello and welcome to Joburg Today. My name is Dumi Hlapo, bringing you the best of what's going down in and around Johannesburg. Insta meets are taking the world by storm and have since infiltrated South African communities throughout the country. The exploring of the streets of Johannesburg has resulted in people coming together to see things from a different angle.
This world is full of experiences, all made up of single moments.
Instagram has taught me about my city and the people in it.
It's always great being around people who love what you love and are having fun doing it. That's another level of greatness.
An amazing group of visual storytellers who have now become my closest friends.
People that are a bit weird, a little bit different, people that are carefree. These are people I can relate to and call my friends.
I've been compelled to appreciate everything around me, forging new relationships from near and far.
Instagram lets me tell my story and participate in other people's stories.
Relative strangers getting together on a given day to take photos and ending up as friends.
Showing how I've grown from picture taker into picture maker.
Snippets of emotion that light up one square at a time.
How I choose to present them and how I freely choose to share them.
Instagram propelled me into the light and revitalized my creative spirit.
Shooting on your phone creates an open space for creativity.
Instagram is an app so small that you can keep it in the palm of your hand, yet it's so big that you have access to the whole world. Who would have thought that an app like this would bring so many people together?
Like us on Facebook, joburgtoday.tv, and follow us on Twitter at Joburg Today. Gareth is the most celebrated and followed Instagrammer in South Africa. Having gotten the nod from the African Bloggers Awards in 2014 and 2015, it's no wonder that he should be the one to start the internationally renowned Instagrammers South Africa.
Hi Gareth, it's an awesome pleasure to actually have you in studio today.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So let's get right into it. So you're the guy who actually started Instagrammers South Africa, which is also world renowned right now. So clearly you saw a gap within the market. Can you just tell us a little bit more about how that started and what prompted you to actually go that route?
Sure. Well, initially it only started off in Johannesburg. I feel like a lot of people who live in Joburg don't get to see a lot of their city. Like they're happy to go to work, go to their favorite restaurants, and then go back home and have watch a movie or something on the couch. And I've always had that element of discovery. So the main reason why I started exploring the city, apart from Instagram, was to sort of rediscover it in that sense. And when Instagram came out, there was a small group of us who actually decided to start taking photos of Joburg that we personally hadn't seen before. Inspired by a lot of the international guys who do something similar, where they'd be shooting shots of New York, streets in New York, and very unique graffiti and certain alleys and that sort of thing. So we were like, hey, wait, we've got things like that in Joburg, why not do the same thing? So we started organizing these little meetups called Insta Meets, and initially there were three of us going through commission the streets and taking photos of the red lines on the floor, you know. And then it started growing.
Speaking of your Instagram account, like I said, it's got a variety of things from architecture, even some cars, and a whole lot of people as well. Instagram in South Africa is kind of like catching up, as we usually do with most of social media, you know. But what I want to actually know from you is, where are we in terms of South Africa and using that platform? Where do you think it will head into, and how can one actually shape their own life, their own careers, or whichever sector that they're in, to actually create a brand for themselves?
Yeah. Well, I feel personally that Instagram in South Africa is still seen as a blogging platform, whereas overseas it's utilized in a full sense for marketing totally. And the main thing around that is, at the moment, a lot of the perception around what Instagram is still very loose. So there's the transition that's actually happening right now. Is a lot of brands are realizing, actually, we need to be on Instagram. A lot of agencies are starting to pitch it to their clients. I get approached by various brands and agencies to help them sort of figure out what that looks like. Like, what is my visual sense of my brand? And how do they represent that within a photo or video sense, you know? So Instagram locally, we're still I'd say we're still very behind. Obviously, naturally, like we always, like you said, we take time to catch up. But the nice thing about being behind is that a lot of people are starting to catch up in a very unique sense. So traditionally, agencies will sometimes do a lot of research into what's worked overseas. But now what I'm starting to see is a lot of people will be like, actually, wait, we could use Instagram in this way. It'll be unique, and it'll also apply to our local audience. So that's been amazing, because it's sort of like a Trojan horse, where Instagram was just like plonked into the country. And like now we're starting to see all these like amazing things come up that are intercepting the industry. So with all that said, like I think we do have a long way to go as South Africa. But the biggest appeal is that a lot of people want South African content now.
Really?
South African, totally. So I recently did a trip to various like African cities, and those images did like abnormally well. They were like, oh wow, we've never seen Africa from the side, and it wasn't the typical sort of African approach. It was a sense of like, how do you represent it as beautiful? Like, how do you, because then, I mean, to be honest, like traditionally a lot of people think Africa and they think about the poverty. And and sure, like that stuff's real, but there's a very different side to Africa that a lot of the world is hungry for. People want to see what you and I see, for example. People want to touch and feel what's tangible here. So in that sense, there's been a lot of really amazing campaigning happening around it, not particularly around Africa in itself, but how do we take that sort of content that's only really available to us and utilize it in a way that it showcases our continent and our country in a very beautiful essence, you know?
And how does one like shape their brand and stuff like that, you know?
Well, I always tell people that they need to find a narrative. So what is your story that you want to tell? Not necessarily what is my story, but what is the story that you want to project out visually? Because Instagram's so visual, people rarely will read your captions, for example, unless you're a poet and you're on Instagram. Sometimes it happens. But generally, in the more broader sense, people have become visually educated because of Instagram. And the way you sort of craft your own brand, your personal brand, or like a brand for, say, like a company, is that you always say, okay, what can I visually represent that translates into a narrative that I can continue to tell that won't lose the interest of people? Does it make sense?
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming into studio and speaking a little bit more about Instagram and everything else.
Pleasure.
We hope that you have a really awesome future. And
so
and you come back to SA actually, and you know, diversify our people and how we can use this wonderful platform.
Definitely. Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome.
How's it? This is Zion, and you are watching Joburg Today.
That's all for today. For more on the city, do check out our playlist. From myself, Dumi Hlapo, and the Joburg Today crew, it's goodbye.